All right, so we're in number 2 on chapter 2 in wisdom in history. The point simply being that this is where we left off last week, that we can and should learn from history. And of course, the history from which we should learn is found not only in our own history, but in the Bible. So let's turn our attention to some of these passages that are listed in the book from Ecclesiastes. We'll start at chapter 1, verses 9 through 11. Now, I believe we touched on this one last week and a couple more like it. We'll just go through some of these texts for a few moments. Ecclesiastes chapter 1. Where's Ecclesiastes? Found it. Nita's looking at me like, what? All right, chapter 1. Then we're going to go to chapter 3. This is 9 through 11. What has been is what will be. What has been done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it is said, see, this is new? It has been done already in the ages before us. There's no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of later things yet to be among those who come after. What does that to say when there should be no remembrance, but these things have been done, there's no remembrance? What is that to say? Sadly, people have forgotten. People have forgotten. We forget, and the human nature is just to forget the lessons of yesteryear, right? And that's one of the sad lessons. Solomon writes this, that you might actually learn from those things. But that's chapter 1. Let's go to chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. The wise person has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. Yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? I said in my heart that this also is vanity. Let's just explore that one just a moment, along with chapter 6 and verse 10. Whosoever or whatsoever comes into being, the name thereof was given long ago. It is foreknown what man is, neither can he contend with him that is mightier than he. So what is that to say? He said, okay, what? Solomon seems to despair of even having wisdom about life because why? The same things happen to me, and the same things happen to the wicked, and seemingly everyone has the same type of events occurring in their lives. So what is the advantage of wisdom? Of course, we know the answer at the end of the book, but the point simply is that this is the way life is, and this is the way history works. Everything continues to happen, unfold along the same lines, and same things happen to the righteous as happen to the wicked. And we need to recognize that to be the case. There's only one answer of it that he gives us in chapter 12, but we'll come to that by and by. But at this point, simply looking at history, what we learn from history and the wisdom that we have there. I'm having turned my page. This is Psalms 139, verses 13 through 16. Psalm 139, verses 13 through 16. This is probably well known to all of us, or at least familiar to us. For you formed, this is David speaking to God, my inward parts, that is, this moral sensitivity. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, my soul knows it very well. My frame, that would be my substance, was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there were none of them. That's a pretty sobering statement, isn't it? That God foresees all, and all of this is written in the code of God. What is that to say? Well, God knows all that's occurring and knows all that will occur in our lives. Jeremiah would say it, how would Jeremiah put it? I think it's chapter 1, verse 5. He said, basically, God called me from the womb, and he knew my days before they were. Remember that statement that Jeremiah made? So this is to simply say God controls history. We say, and it comes from the Bible, such and such is an act of God. That is to say, accidents happen, things occur, and we say in insurance companies, well, that's an act of God. What do we mean by that's an act of God? Say again. Yeah, no one's fault. It's not anyone's fault. Okay, say again. Yeah, we don't have control over that. And that would include what kind of circumstances? Hail, disaster, tornadoes, storms. All those things are acts of God. And the Bible does show us they're acts of God in the sense that God is in control and God has orchestrated the world to work in a certain fashion. And we recognize that to be the case. Now, I suppose in modern times, I don't know if insurance companies still use that phraseology or not, but they used to. I don't know do they do that, Joe, anymore? It's an act of God, not anyone's fault. But it is to say we recognize that God controls the events of this life. So the wisdom that we find in history, and that is that God is in control and these are acts of God. Let's notice also this one. This is from Isaiah chapter 46, verses 9 and 10. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, there is none other. I am God, and there's none like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, from ancient times things not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will accomplish all of my purpose. It is to say that God controls all. So we have the statement in Daniel chapter 4 that God rules in the kingdoms of men. He raises up kings and he brings down kings. We could even say he raises up presidents and he brings down presidents. He raises up nations and brings down nations. Everything that occurs is in God's control. At the same time, down to the very minutiae of life, the very small particles of life, where we have a passage, I was going to use it this morning, if I can recall it, in the sermon, Proverbs 21:1, and that is the king's heart is water in the hands of the Lord. He turns it wheresoever he will. Or we have in Proverbs chapter 21 and verse 31, and that is the horses are prepared for the day of battle. We can say the tanks are prepared for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. So everything down to those very small portions of life. And not one sparrow falls, and God does not know of it. So it's a remarkable thought beyond really my ability to comprehend the extent of it. That is God's providence controlling all the universe, at the same time, right here, controlling every little thing and knowing even the hairs on my head. Pretty remarkable, isn't it? But all of that is simply to say that, therefore, we should learn from history. So let's think about one of those propositions I laid out last week, and that is there's freedom. So we're moving over here. Maybe we should move on to this next one here. Well, before we get to freedom, let's look at a couple more here. This is Amos chapter 3, verses 3 through 6. Amos 3, 3 through 6. Right next to the passage that I called out as, at least in my mind, the theme of Amos, where he says, verse 8, the lion has roared, who will not fear? The Lord has spoken, who cannot prophesy? But we have verses 3 through 6, right preceding that, where he makes this statement, do two walk together unless they have agreed to meet? Does a lion roar in the forest when he has no prey? Does a young lion cry out from his den if he has taken nothing? Does a bird fall in a snare on the earth when there's no trap for it? Does a snare spring up from the ground when it has taken nothing? Is a trumpet blown in the city and the people are not afraid? Does disaster come to a city unless the Lord has done it? For the Lord does nothing without revealing his secret to his servants, the prophets. The last line there is pretty bold, isn't it? Does disaster come unless the Lord has done it? That is to say, everything is in God's control. So Amos chapter 3 is pretty simple and bold statement. Let's look at one more. This is from 1 Chronicles chapter 29, verses 11 and 12. Now this is on page, I don't know, in my book it's 31, but I don't know if it's in your book. On what page number? What is it? 38? Okay. 1 Chronicles 29, verses 11 and 12. Excuse me. Thine, O Lord, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, the majesty. For all that is in heaven and the earth is thine. Thine is the kingdom, O Lord, and thou art exalted and as head above all. Both riches and honor come of thee. Thou reignest over all, and in thy hand is power and might, and in thine hand it is to make great and to give strength unto all. So we have the bold statement from all of the prophets, from Solomon, and from the Chronicles historical account that God controls it all. But that brings us to point number 3, and destiny and freedom. So here's what I almost launched into a moment ago. Since God controls everything, and everything is under his auspices, what about freedom that people have? Do people have the freedom? So we're talking about our own destiny and freedom. So let's think about freedom. So let me just kick it open to you. What kind of freedom do we have? Okay, freedom of choice. Is there any boundaries to our freedom? Right. It's not the right to do just whatever you want to do, even though we have the freedom. But God has set boundaries. He said, okay, here is the pathway of right, here's the pathway of wrong, and you're free to choose. But I want you to know that here's what's going to happen if you're going to be on this pathway. It's predestined. Here's what's going to happen if you get on this road. It is predestined. It's already set. This is why people, I think, why don't we learn from history, myself included? Because God has set these pathways, and the end results on each of them is well known and is spoken in the Word of God. And yet, we continue individually and nationally to make choices and go, I'm going to go on this pathway, see where this takes me here. God tells you where this is going to go. He tells you the end result, doesn't he? He tells you what is going to occur if you get on this pathway. He also will tell us what occurs if you get on this pathway. All of those are well set. So thinking about freedom, we're going to go to Job chapter 1. Job chapter 1. This passage, well known to all of us, is where Satan, we're going to pick up in verse 9, I believe it is. Verse 6, actually, 6. And we'll take it down to verse 22. So someone of you read that, if you will. Good read, okay? So what, regarding destiny and freedom, what are we learning from this particular account? Whatever. But let's think about destiny and freedom first of all. We can talk about his reaction in a minute. Let's talk about destiny and freedom. That would be his reaction. He could have done that. But what about destiny and freedom? All right, let me reframe the question. Did God allow suffering for Job? Why? Faith in Job. Why did God allow it? I think the word is really test. He tested him. He allowed, okay, so here we have, who did the testing? Well, we could say in one sense God, because he allowed Satan to afflict him. So God allows Satan to operate on a chain. And he operates that way against us and afflicts us, but it is in God's overarching purpose to test him to see whether or not he would be faithful. Correct. Now, let's go to Job's reaction. Go ahead. Job, his reaction was? He did not blame God. So that would be his reaction. He was tested, and he came through not blaming God. So that's the whole point regarding destiny and freedom. God allows things to occur that are negative in consequences to us, but they are at the hand of Satan. So we could say God allows it. It's an act of God. But at the same time, we could say Satan causes these things to occur. Can't we? Yes, sir. What if you are unfaithful? What if you curse God and die? So that not everything works out for your good. You're tested. You are put to the test. And some people curse God and die. That's exactly the passage I have in mind. 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 5. What does Peter say? Your faith, though it is proved or tried by fire, may be found to praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. But it may be. What happens if it's not found to be that way? You're not going to be there. You're lost. Yeah. So that's that's the point regarding what we have here in Job. And that is God gave Satan the ability to test him, and that was under the auspices of God, and the testing was done with God's approval, but he was not one responsible for the actions that occurred. And that was to test Job, and Job came through, as pointed out here, that he came through and did not curse God. That's what we learned from him. He did not curse God. He could have. That was his option, right? So we have the same thing as the case all through the Bible, everywhere. So let's just look at a couple of passages, unless there's something you want to add to that. Some of you look thoughtful and contemplative. Say, okay, let's see, let's think about that. So if you want to do stop me, that's great. That is absolutely the case. It is hard to watch. It's hard to live. It's harder to live, isn't it? If your life depends upon those crops, that would be the case. Yes, ma'am. If you didn't hear her in the back, she's talking about she's trying to explain that to children and how God's in charge of those things. It's very difficult sometimes to make that explanation. It's hard for us to make that explanation. It's hard for us to understand it. Yeah, and that goes back to Job. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. That's what we just, right. Let's look at Deuteronomy chapter 28. We'll look at verse 1. And then we'll jump around here just a little bit. Deuteronomy chapter 28. 28. Did I say 1? Hey, 28. I'm sorry, 28. Yeah. I may have miscalled it. 28:1. Now, just glancing at the chapter, you'll see 28. You have little headings in your Bible? Okay, this one is headed how? Blessings for obedience, correct. Now, go down here to verse 15. What's the heading? Curses for disobedience. All right, now how long is the blessings for obedience? How many verses? 14. How many verses are curses for disobedience? Down to verse 70. Yeah, or 68 rather. All right, so now you just think about that. You can see where Moses, God inspiring him, was more concerned about, which was the real concern, and that would be disobedience. That's what he's concerned about. So we'll start at verse 1. If you faithfully obey the voice of the Lord your God, being careful to do all of his commandments that I command you this day, then what? The Lord will set you high above all the nations. All these blessings will come upon you and overtake you. Verse 3, blessed you in the city, in the field, and you can go through those entire 14 verses. But, verse 15, if you do not obey the voice of the Lord your God, to be careful to do all of his commandments, then all of these curses will come upon you. Cursed shall you be in the city, in the field, at the kneading bowl, that is making bread. That is in the kitchen. You'll be cursed in the kitchen. Cursed shall be the fruit of your womb. And he goes through it on and on. Verse 20, the Lord will send on you curses, confusion, frustration, and all that you undertake to do until you are destroyed and perish, and quickly on account of the evil deeds, because you have forsaken me. Then he says in verse 29, you shall be oppressed and robbed continually. And the word there is forever, forever. That is, the people of Israel will lose it forever. Going on through the entire chapter, he finishes, it says, the Lord will scatter you among all the peoples, verse 64. From one end of heaven to the other, there you'll serve other gods of wood, stone, which neither you nor your fathers have known. And he goes through all of this. So we have, once again, two pathways. Pathway of obedience, pathway of disobedience. Pathway of doing good, pathway of doing evil. God says, here are the consequences of each. So there's freedom, but the freedom has already been predetermined what will be the consequences of each choice you make. Isn't that interesting? So that has to do with your freedom and your destiny. We know you have a choice. Job shows us that. You have a choice. And Job chose to what? And bless, honor God, and what? Obey him, honor him, bless him. He did not curse God. Now, he did have someone that was left there to help him try to go the other direction. That would be his wife. Right? She said, curse God and die. What are you doing, Job? Curse God and die. And his supportive friends came along. Yeah, they came along too, and they said basically the same thing. They said, well, they said, all of this has happened because you have sinned, and we're going to try to figure out what your sin is. You need to confess it. They were mistaken on it. They thought that all negative consequences come because of your sin, but it does not necessarily. It could. That's what Deuteronomy 28 is about, but not necessarily. Let's go to another passage in 2 Chronicles. I'll try to call this one correctly this time. 2 Chronicles 7. Verse 12. This is Solomon. Solomon doing the preaching. All right, someone take us from verse 12 through verse 20. 2 Chronicles 7, 12 to verse 20. Think about the if-then statements that are made over and again. If my people are called by my name. If you do this, then I will hear from heaven. If you walk before me, then I will establish your throne. If you turn aside, then I will pluck you up. All of those if-then statements, so simple and so plain. Meaning, of course, that we have a choice. We have a choice. And the choice and the destinies of each choice have already been set. And here's what's going to happen. And that occurs individually and nationally as well. So there are a lot of passages that have this where God is testing, allows things to occur to test us. So let's just look at these. This is on the same page. I have it in my book, but we'll just look at several from Proverbs. It may be, I'm not sure what page are we on that one, Nita. I think it's, the same one as Chronicles. I'm talking about Proverbs 5:21. For the ways of a man are before the eyes of the Lord, and he ponders all his goings, Proverbs 5:20. Maybe yours didn't have that one, I don't know. Here's another one. These are three texts that show his omnipresent knowledge. The eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding evil and good. Proverbs 15:3. The eyes of the Lord are in every place. 45, thank you. Okay, it's all right. All right, Proverbs 15:11. Hell and destruction are before the Lord. How much more then the hearts of the children of men? What's the point here? Hell and destruction are before the Lord. Therefore, how about more the hearts of men? He sees, he knows, he sees the end results of each of them. He knows what's going on there. He knows what's here. He knows what's going on in the hearts of men. Or 16:2 of Proverbs. All the ways of a man are clean in his own eyes, but the Lord is the one who weighs the spirits. He knows and he tests. And then, that reminds me of the passage that we have in 1 Peter 1:7. Brother Joe mentioned, that is, our faith is purified or tested by fire. What is Peter talking about there? They were going to have bloody persecution in the first century. That your faith, being tried by fire, may be found unto praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. Purified, smelting the process, and burning off all the impurities. And life has a way of doing that, doesn't it? The difficulties that we face. Now here's something interesting, I thought. This is from Proverbs 20 and verse 11. I thought, and last night I was reading this when I pondered it, I thought, very interesting. Now, we don't usually turn to Solomon for early childhood development, do we? I have never been to an early childhood development class in sociology, psychology, in which they say, let's turn to the Bible, see what Solomon had to say. Even a child is known by his doings, whether his work be pure or whether it be right. The hearing ear, the seeing eye, the Lord has made both of them. All right, what's the point here? Child shows the propensities of life by actions. So our obligation, when we see those propensities, is to do what? All right. Yeah, get on them. Yeah, correct them. Try to channel it in different directions. The child shows propensities for what happens later in life. We don't really think that way, do we? I don't think so. You know, all those years in juvenile detention, I think about all those kids. I thought, boy, they are showing their propensities in life by what they're doing. 13, 14-year-old committing crimes, you know. All right, so I know very well where they're going to be, unless they have radical change. But frequently that does not occur. Yes, sir. Yeah, we do think about other kids. Those are other kids, yeah. Not my own. Your kid's going to prison. My kid's going to the house of God. Yeah, we do, don't we? That's easy for us to do. Yeah, your kid's showing propensity. Well, it may be that way, but you know what? He's good at heart. He's good. He's got a good heart. Well, you know, they show their propensities and reveal their heart. By the way, do we all reveal what's in our hearts? Right. You listen to a man long enough, they'll tell you their bad intentions. They'll tell you, they reveal their hearts to you. People reveal their hearts. I hear people say, we can't read hearts. Well, I don't read hearts, but I can read what their hearts are saying by listening, just listening. We don't listen enough. Yeah. What are we going to do for lunch? Like right now, okay, how much longer is this class going to be? Okay. That's who we are. All right, here's another one, Proverbs 20 and verse 27. Wow, this was a strong one. I jotted down some notes on this one. The spirit of the man is the lamp of the Lord, or lamp of Jehovah, searching all his innermost parts. All right, what is that to say? The spirit of a man is the lamp of Jehovah. Now, in the New Testament, here's a passage that will help us along the way, my estimation. John 1 and 4. There is a light that lights every man coming into the world. What is that to say? Well, that's all true. I won't disagree with that. There is a light that lights every man coming into the world. Same thing, the spirit of a man. The spirit of a man is the light of God. What does that mean? Okay, God brings us about, and we know that because we have moral sensitivity. If we stop and think, where do we get moral sensitivity? That I say it that way because it's not to say we always make the right decisions, what is moral and what is immoral, but we have the sensitivity to discern there is something moral and something immoral. What is it to say that man is created in the image of God? What's that to say? Yeah, we can draw, let's just summarize it by saying he has rational ability to draw conclusions that are warranted by evidence. We have the ability to do that. Animals operate on what? Instinct only. They don't weigh the qualities of a person and then make a rational decision as you would do when you're thinking about people and things. You're able to bring that material together and make a rational decision. Rationality is the ability to reason, to ponder through these things. We have rationality. Rationality is one of those key elements that men have. I take it that's what he's referring to, the light of Jehovah, the light of God that is made in the image of God. Rationality, we have moral sensitivity. Is that to say everyone does right? No. Is it to say that we should do right? Yes, because we know it instinctively in our heart that there's something right and wrong. We may draw the line. I remember C.S. Lewis made this statement. In his book, Mere Christianity, he said, you go all around the world and people are going to draw the line on morality in different places. Everywhere you go, they're going to draw the line here or here or here or there. But you will never go where there is not a line drawn. They always draw a line somewhere. This is right and that's wrong. Why? Because God put it in us to have that sensitivity that there's something right and something wrong. We always draw lines. Everybody does. Yes, sir. Yeah, it's like Donald Trump. You know, Joe was telling me this morning on the way, we'll finish, and then we're done, but about some of the people that he's bringing to Christ in Duncan, some of the people in his Bible study, he said they're all tatted up on their faces. They've had prison records. They've been in prison a long time. They can come out of it, and they don't even want to talk about their past because it's so ugly and things they've done, but there's forgiveness in Jesus Christ, and that is possible always. That's always possible to do because people recognize there are right and wrong, and it's so great to have people who recognize it, even if they've been steeped in life of alcoholism or wherever it may be. So, all right, let's, anything else we need to add to that? All right, we'll take a few minutes break, 15, actually 13 to be exact. Saw Bruce look at his watch, he said, no. All right. So he didn't think I could see that, but I saw it. What?